Hello students, welcome to Oliveboard. I'm your faculty Rahul Yaduka, and again we are meeting on 8 p.m. Wednesday to discuss certain important current affairs issues of the previous week and to see also how we can expect certain questions on them and how we can decode the demand of those questions, think about the content that we can put into those answers, and then structure and present your answer. So I think this is our 12th session in the row. I'm extremely apologetic about not being able to hold a session last Wednesday because of some personal engagement and technical reasons. But as usual, we'll be continuing this session without any break. Before we deliberately decide to close this session or whatever. So there has been a repeated questions from the students in the live chat box that uh, are we going to end these classes, or till what time these classes will be going on, or will these classes be going on till the examinations are over? So I'm repeatedly answering these questions, and again I'm saying uh, these classes will be continuous and we'll be discussing a couple of topics every week, right? Right. So without any delay, let us start the business of today's class. Before we start discussing the topics for the day, this is an important announcement that you all of you know that we are going to celebrate 74th Republic Day tomorrow. So on this auspicious occasion, Oliveboard is also coming up with some kind of offer to the students, and that is you can save 40% in the enrollment fees for our course plans on different examinations of regulatory bodies like RBI, SEBI, SIDBI, and Nabard, right? So only condition is that you have to undertake this offer, utilize this offer before 27th of January, right? So you can choose among our different plan. We have a mentorship batch in which there is exclusive allocation of experts along with your complete study material, and that will be followed up with some kind of mock test, right? Another possible plan is study material and mock test. In this particular plan, you will not be getting any expert mentor dedicated to you. And in third, you have only study notes and mock tests. So depending on your requirement and depending on your comfort, you can choose between these possible plans, right? And to utilize this offer, you have to use the code RDAY, that is the abbreviated form of Republic Day. I hope you will utilize this opportunity from Oliveboard. Right. So the first topic that we are interested to discuss today is pertaining to a very significant shift that China is witnessing in its population size. Right. So it has been in the news and it's making a lot of noise that China's population is going to shrink for the first time since 1961. So whenever it comes to talk about China, we remember that it is the most populous country in the world. Or whenever it comes to population, any discussion on population, we suddenly recall China. That China is the most populous country in the world, followed by our own country, that is India. And whenever this debate is there about development or scarcity of resources or climate change or whatever, we are often reminded that a lot of problems that we face is also because that we are still a developing country, plus we have a very significant population size only next to China. But what is happening or what is going to happen very soon is that we may surpass China's population size in 2023. So there are multiple reasons for this, right? And today we are going to explore those reasons, that why this uh, remarkable change is going to happen. So the first thing that you have to remember that India is the second most populous country right now, and it may become, or it is almost going to become definitely the world's most populous nation this year in 2023. Now, you will also see, I think you must have studied in demography somewhere, that there is a population transition theory, that you don't see a sudden rise in population of a country or sudden phasing out of population in a country. There are different stages, and those stages are determined by a balance or imbalance of death rate and birth rate. So you know that backward society which does not have advanced technology, good health services, etc. So there the number of deaths will balance the number of birth. Right? People won't be using contraceptives. There won't be any centralized family planning measures, etc. And also there won't be good health services. People will be dying at the time of childbirth or in infancy or during pregnancy, right? Many people won't make it beyond 5 years of age, 3 years of age. There will be small issues like flu, smallpox, malaria, and people will die. So this was what is going to happen in the primitive kind of society. So at that stage also, you will not see a population explosion, right? Because death rate is approximately equal to birth rate, right? But what gradually happens ordinarily in the global discourse, that slowly there will be advancement in people's understanding that there should not be many more childbirths, right? Because it impacts women health. In that case, the family won't be able to give a good life to the children. People also get good health services. So random deaths decline. People don't die because of silly reasons, small diseases, everyday kind of issues. So you will see a decline in birth rate, and you'll also see a decline in death rate. But that gap will be increasing. So you'll see a rise in population. At one point, it will happen that there will be a population explosion, that people will be producing more number of children and less people will be dying, right? Because then comes the role of government also. Government protects its citizens by welfare measures. You have seen during COVID also that and presently also government is expanding its coverage of Food Security Act. It is providing minimum ration food grains to a lot of billions of people. So that is also stopping people from dying of starvation and hunger. So it is in this broader forces. There are many forces which are controlling this population data. So it is in this backdrop you have to understand the population change. So why I'm saying all this? Because second point that you can see on the slide is the start of a long period of decline. Because once this trend uh, gathers momentum of declining population in China, it is not going to reverse itself overnight, right? Because why population is declining, you have to understand that. You see, there has been a policy of Chinese government of producing only one child, right? But we will move to that in next slide. First, you have to see uh, why we have said shrinking population first time since 1961. So associated with this is another discussion that we should have. It will increase our understanding of economy also. You know that uh, there was a communist revolution in China under Mao Zedong or Mao Zedong. It is differently spelled in different places. So Mao Zedong undertook a communist revolution. You must have read about 1917 Russian Revolution. That was also communist revolution. So at that time they adopted a particular kind of economic model in the country. And very simply, you should see that the focus of this communist uh, revolution and succeeding economy was focused on industrialization, right? And there should be community farming. People should give up private property in land. Everybody should do the manual labor of producing steel, as was called in China, right? Uh, of course, it was mismanaged. It was a poor kind of economic planning, and government could not see or deliberately ignored the decline in food production, right? So when you started farming in communes and started focusing on industrialization, what happened that the minimum amount of food grain required to sustain the population in terms of requirement of grains was not fulfilled, and also since it was not a trained kind of labor that was involved in production of steel, the right quality and quantity of steel also could not be produced. So there was a slump in the economy overall, right? So it gradually culminated in 1961, where around 30 million people died of hunger, right? 30 million people died of hunger. This data is also contestable because it is not a liberal democracy that all freedom of press is there. People have right to freedom of speech, they can speak their opinion. No. So there is a possibility that this figure is underestimated. Many more people would have died, right? So there may be a case of millions of unaccounted death in China also in 1961. So that is why we have set 1961 as a benchmark, right? So I think this thing is clear to you. Now, what is happening that China has adopted a one-child policy because it has a thinking that if you have less number of people in your society, there will be less number of mouth to feed. So I won't go into much detail of this. This is related to Malthusian thinking that population grows at geometric progression and food grains are produced only in arithmetic progression. So the requirement of food will outstrip the production of grains. So there will be famines. This is Malthusian theory, right? So governments understood that to tackle these famines, what we have to do, we have to control the population. So this conception and this idea of controlling the population, population control, population policy, one child norm, two child norm, everything is related to this Malthusian thinking that we cannot produce, we cannot compete in terms of food production. Food production will grow slowly, child production will grow fastly. So we have to decrease the population somehow. And it is in this backdrop that China came up with one child policy from 1980 to 2015. Now for 35 years, you force people through incentives to procreate only one child, right? It disincentivized having a child. So naturally, you have that will get reflected, right? So it is going to impact a lot of economic activity also because that people are not only fed, people are also laborers. If you have one mouth to feed, you have two hands to work, right? Then also I would like to underline that discussion that uh, you have a productive age group between, let's say, 15 to 65. So if you have more number of people in this age group, you will have a productive economy because till 15 years, the people are dependent on a working age population. Up to 15 years of age, we don't work. So somebody else is feeding us indirectly. Once we are beyond 65 years of age, then also we are not working in the economy. So somebody else is working for us. So that is what is called demographic dividend. India is having a demographic dividend. We have more people who are working in working age group and less people who are in dependent age group. From 0 to 15 and 65 plus, this is dependent age group. So in what sense they are dependent? We have to feed them, we have to educate them, we have to give them healthcare services, we have to give them pensions, old age pensions, so on and so forth. So it is going to impact China's economy. Now, if you look at last year's birth rate, it is 6.77 births per thousand population. It has declined from 2021 from 7.52 births, right? And death rate is also increasing. In 2021, there were 7.18 deaths per thousand people compared to 7.37 deaths per thousand people. So, so what you see? You see that birth rate is declining and death rate is increasing. So there is contraction of population size, right? So this is the overall context in which you have to understand this. Now you can also relate this with uh, India's population scenario. Recently, there has been a lot of discussion on controlling population in India, right? Indira Gandhi, when this negotiation on climate change was also taking place, that even developed underdeveloped countries should also contribute to climate change control, right? Just give me a break for a second. Yeah, I'm so sorry. So you have to see that, I mean, you have to keep a track of what debate is going on in India, that the government is time to time throwing is in media or public discourse that there has to be a discussion on population control. And there is also a discussion on targeted population control of a particular community, particular religious community. There is a manufactured sentiment that certain religious communities are producing more children. So this is also something you have to study. Why I am saying this? This is because this is the approach of examinations, right? Discussions is on China's policy. So conductors of examination know that you must be reading about China's population, but they will not about ask about China's population. They will deliberately ask about India's population. Why? The reason is that they expect you to think beyond what is in the news. You have to pick the issue out of the news. There is one thing called petty news that is coming in the media, and then you are expected as a candidate to decipher what is the broader pattern behind this, what is the issue at stake. And whenever you read something, global economy, global climate change, global recession, something like that, always try to make it a point that you try to relate this debate with India's problem, because ultimately it is an examination for India's RBI or Nabard or SEBI or SEDBI, whatever. So whenever there is a discussion, it may involve an Indian angle, it may not involve, but try to make sure to add a section in your notes also. How is it going to have a bearing on India? Let's say China is engaging with Taiwan over some South China Sea. Although it may sound like an issue between China and Taiwan, but India has an interfering role in that. There may be some recession in Sri Lankan economy, but India has a relation with Sri Lanka. That is what we are going to talk next. So make it an approach, right? Rather than applying this to only this topic. Yeah. So the next topic that we will discuss is India to support Sri Lanka's debt restructuring plans. Debt restructuring plans. Now you know that China is in a very sorry Sri Lanka is in a very poor shape. Its economy, its polity, its society, everything is turning upside down. You must have seen those visuals in media where citizens of Sri Lanka are barging inside its own parliament. Its political leadership has fled the country, and there is nobody to govern the society. And this crisis was brewing slowly for last 6 8 months. The cost of currency was increasing, the value of currency was decreasing, the cost of food grains was increasing, petroleum was unavailable, it was becoming very costly, inflation was there. So a lot of things were happening. Since 1948, the crisis that we see in Sri Lanka right now is one of the worst economic crises since 1948, when it's acquired political freedom from colonizers. So there has been a shortage of dollars, runaway inflation, and a steep recession. Now you know why is shortage of dollar a problem? Because dollar is the universal currency. You trade between different countries regarding different products and services through dollars. So you don't have foreign exchange reserve. How will you purchase your minimum basic necessities which you import? For instance, some countries import even water, milk, or some food grains or clothes. or petroleum products, fossil fuel, many things are there. Depending on their resource pattern, they may have to sell and purchase something from different parts of the world. So what is the currency that you use for it? You use dollars. Of course, there is an attempt to uh, unhinge from dollars only. There are different kind of negotiations going on, that why not countries can trade through their own currency bilaterally. So that apart, by and large, the universal acceptance is of dollars. So India also faced this kind of crisis in 1984, where we gradually started moving towards new economic policy, that is LPG reforms, liberalization, privatization, and globalization. What is runaway inflation? Inflation is healthy if it is in under limit. You know that. But when it is runaway inflation, that it means that it is completely going out of control. इतना ज़्यादा inflation हो जाए, what was happening in Zimbabwe some years back. One apple was coming from 35,000 Zimbabwean currency. It is insane. People won't be able to afford basic things. There is a joke also on this kind of runaway inflation that people carry money in their bags and purchase vegetables and keep it in pocket. But it should be vice versa. You should carry your currency in your pocket and you should get enough vegetables that you can carry in a bag. So this is a kind of metaphor that is used to denote runaway inflation. Now, what is deep recession? Economy is recession. There is no demand, there is no job, unproductivity, closing of industries and services, everything is there. So you can also again take a leaf and there may be a question on India's economic reform. What was happening in 1990s and 7-8 years preceding that? Why we ended up undertaking LPG reforms 1991, right? So what is happening right now? Where is India? So Sri Lanka owes India 1 billion US dollars. पहले तो उनको इतना कर्ज हमने दे रखा है. Next, India is also going to provide 4 billion US dollar in rapid assistance between January and July last year. फिर से हमने दिया है, उनकी इकोनॉमी की हालत इतनी खराब थी, right? Now there are different mechanisms through which we are going to extend our helps. Credit lines can be there. Credit lines means there can be extension of credit to rebuild the economy at very cheap interest rate. Normally अगर 5% इंटरेस्ट रेट पे देशों को दिया जाता है, तो अगर कोई इकोनॉमी बहुत ही बुरे हालत में है, देन वी कैन से दैट आप एक मिनिमम 0.5% के इंटरेस्ट पे दे दो. दूसरा तरीका हो सकता है लॉन्ग टर्म क्रेडिट, कि आपको 2 साल 5 साल 10 साल में चुकाने की जरूरत नहीं है, आप 30 साल बाद चुका देना. सो दिस इज व्हाट इज एक्सपेक्टेड, राइट? जिस इकोनॉमी की हालत इतनी खराब है, यू कैन नॉट एक्सपेक्ट अ गुड पेमेंट साइकिल, वो जल्दी जल्दी आपको पे बैक करें. यू कांट एक्सपेक्ट. सेकेंड, you can't expect them to pay a lot of interest on your credit. So these things come under credit lines. Currency swap arrangement. Currency swap arrangement में है कि आप हमें अपना करेंसी दे दो, हम आपको डॉलर दे देंगे, या आप हमारी करेंसी में हमसे खरीद लो. We won't compel you to pay in dollars. You can pay in Indian national rupees also. That is also kind of help, right? We are not coercing you to pay in dollars because we know that you don't have sufficient foreign exchange reserves. Deferred import payments. Deferred import payment भी एक तरह का help है. That suppose Sri Lanka is importing, let's say, food grains from India, then we are just giving a concession to it, a relaxation to it. That okay, you don't need to pay upfront. You can pay in after 6 months or 1 year. So these are different ways to help the economy build itself. That you get the basic requirements, because food grains is required, fuel is required, right? Electricity, energy is required. वो ही नहीं देंगे, how it can start taking its economy on its own. But we can't expect a cost of it right now. So these are different ways in which we are trying Sri Lanka to restructure its economy, rebuild its economy. So if there is a question that what are different ways in which we are trying to help Sri Lanka, then you can write, we are giving it some kind of grant, we are giving it some kind of loan, we are also helping currency swap arrangement, we are deferring import payments, so on and so forth, right? Next, now there is a thing called IMF, International Monetary Fund. IMF was also in discussion, IMF and World Bank, when India was opening its economy through LPG reforms, right? So the point is that IMF is saying that okay, we will help you bail out, we will bail you out from this crisis, ठीक है? But there are certain conditionalities associated with help of IMF. IMF जब आपको help करता है, और normally भी, suppose we are going to pay or we are going to help Sri Lanka. So we want some kind of guarantee that Sri Lanka will not abuse our resources. अगर हम उसे help कर रहे हैं तो वो उसका proper utilization करे, खुद को भी बेहतर बनाए और हमारा भी चुका पाए, वो इस स्थिति में आ जाए. Now we see that suppose we are going to give Sri Lanka $1 billion US, and we see that the political leadership in the country is not having a good economic policy, good economic strategy. It is simply going to waste that money in subsidies. Subsidy is not a productive kind of investment in neoclassical economics, of course. So there are some conditionalities associated with that, right? So Sri Lanka has to secure prior financing assurance from creditors. One, put its heavy debt burden on a sustainable path. And third, increase public revenue before the global lender disperses the fund. Now try to understand this statement. Who is the global lender of the funds? IMF. IMF कहता है कि you have to do certain things before we help you. So what is the first thing that you have to do? Secure prior financing assurance from creditor. Who are the creditors? These are the creditors like China, Japan and India. China and Japan and India are major players who are going to bilaterally help Sri Lanka. तो IMF जब पैसा दे रहा है तो IMF कह रहा है कि जो आपके हेल्पर्स हैं, क्रेडिटर्स हैं कंट्रीज, आप उनसे पहले अश्योरेंस लो कि वो आपको हेल्प करेंगे, नहीं तो हम अपना पैसा गलत जगह नहीं लगाएंगे, राइट? सेकेंड, heavy debt burden on a sustainable path. Now every country has a debt ratio, right? हमारे पास बहुत ज्यादा पब्लिक डेट है, जितनी बड़ी हमारी इकोनॉमी है वो सारा हमारा पैसा नहीं है, उसमें बायलैटरल इन्वेस्टमेंट है, एशियन डेवलपमेंट बैंक का पैसा है, वर्ल्ड बैंक का पैसा है, IMF का पैसा है, तमाम तरह का पैसा लगा हुआ है. लेकिन डेब्ट को हमें सर्विस भी करना है. सर्विस करने का मतलब है अगर हमने कर्ज लिया है तो हमें टाइम टू टाइम उसका इंटरेस्ट भी पेमेंट करना है. वो करे बिना वो अनसस्टेनेबल हो जाएगा और हम बैंकरप्ट हो जाएंगे, कोलैप्स कर जाएगी इकोनॉमी, रनअवे इन्फ्लेशन हो जाएगा, लोग देश छोड़कर भाग जाएंगे, राइट? सो दूसरा कंडीशनैलिटी उनका है दैट यू हैव टू ब्रिंग योर डेट बर्डन ऑन ए सस्टेनेबल पाथ. आप एक प्लान बताइए कि आप इतना जो कर्ज ले रखे हैं इसको आप कैसे चुकाएंगे, कब तक चुकाएंगे, इसको चुकाने के लिए जो इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ आपको करना है वो आप कैसे करेंगे, अपनी पब्लिक रेवेन्यू को आप कैसे बढ़ाएंगे. पब्लिक रेवेन्यू बढ़ेगा इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ से. इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ के लिए आपको इन्वेस्ट करना होगा इंडस्ट्रीज में. नाउ यू हैव अ लिमिटेड रिसोर्स, आइदर यू कैन सेव एंड पुट इनटू इन्वेस्टमेंट और यू कैन सिंपली कंज्यूम दैट मनी. कहां कंज्यूम होता है? सब्सिडी में. आप जाकर के लोगों को मुफ्त में अनाज बांट रहे हैं तो उससे कोई इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ नहीं हो सकता. बट इफ यू curtail that wasteful public expenditure and then put it into industries, you improvise the technology, you give credit to those people who can use it and give jobs to other people, right? इस तरह की चीज अगर आप करते हैं then there is a called good investment that helps increase public revenue. आप किसी को मुफ्त अनाज बांटते हैं, you don't tax it, but if you give somebody credit then you charge interest out of it. So it is in this context that Sri Lanka has to look for helpers like China, Japan and India. So IMF has stressed the importance of joint talks involving three of Sri Lanka's main bilateral creditors. IMF is not a bilateral creditor. IMF is a global financial institution in which there is membership of different countries of the world. कुछ का ज़्यादा control है like US, कुछ का कम control है like India. But it's not a country. It's a global financial multilateral institution. But multilateral के apart you have bilateral, in which two countries talk to each other on their mutual level, personal level. So IMF यही कह रहा है कि आप इस तरह से करें कि हम आपको हेल्प करने की स्थिति में आए. We are not going to waste our resources. Here comes the role of India. इंडिया जो भी उनके साथ बात कर रहा है, उनको हेल्प करने की कोशिश कर रहा है, it is in this context. So this is it from my end, and there are a couple of things that I wanted to tell you regarding these two questions. That जैसा मैंने पहले भी कहा कि whenever you read about any topic, like let's say population we have talked, or economic recession we are talking, ऐसा नहीं है that it is related only with China or Sri Lanka. As I have told you in the discussion, India also has similar kind of concerns. इंडिया के डिबेट में भी आप देखेंगे, if you read economic survey or budget or whatever, normal Indian economy from any resource, you will see that there is public debt in India, there is crisis of foreign exchange reserves, there is import dependence, there is bad balance of trade, there is geopolitical crisis, there is non-performing assets in the banking sector, there is wasteful public expenditure, there is a talk about rationalization of subsidies. Everything that is plaguing Sri Lanka right now is also a perpetual issue in by and large any economy of the world, and India in particular. So उस दिशा में क्या क्या सजेशंस हैं, क्या क्या सरकार ने कमेटी बनाई है डिफरेंट चीज़ों के लिए, बैंक को ठीक करने के लिए, रेगुलेटर्स को ठीक करने के लिए, ट्रेड को ठीक करने के लिए, फर्टिलाइजर को ठीक करने के लिए, पेट्रोलियम को ठीक करने के लिए. वी आर डाइवर्सिफाइंग आवर रिसोर्स पार्टनर्स. हम सिर्फ ईरान और सऊदी अरेबिया पे डिपेंडेंट नहीं रहना चाहते. वी आर गोइंग टू engage with, let's say, Venezuela. We are engaging with Nigeria, अफ्रीकन कंट्रीज, इसराइल. अभी सबसे हमारा इंपॉर्टेंट पार्टनर रशिया फिर से बन रहा है नेचुरल गैस में आफ्टर रशिया यूक्रेन वॉर. ये सारी चीजें हमने पिछले सेशंस में बात की हैं. सो आई वुड रिक्वेस्ट ऑल ऑफ यू, एडवाइस ऑल ऑफ यू टू try to look at specific news articles into a broader context. There try to see और क्या क्या questions बन सकते हैं, right? That way you will be able to improvise your preparation, right? So that is from my end, and please write your comments, queries, doubts, suggestions, remarks, feedbacks. How do you like these sessions? Any improvements are required in the live chat box or the chat box after this video ends, and we'll continue our session.